Well, that time is upon us yet again. It's the monthly CD haul where I showcase all the CDs I picked up throughout the month and I give my first impressions. This month I picked up 64 albums, so it's going to be another long one. So let's jump right into it. Breyer's Music Showcase is brought to you by the people over at Patreon. Pledge today and get access to exclusive perks. Link in the description. Welcome to Breyer's Music Showcase. I'm Bryer and welcome back to another video. So recently for these CD hauls, I've been trying to have chapters to these to kind of make them a little easier to go through. And this is going to be no exception. Last time I did genre, but for this month I'm going to do something slightly different and I'll explain as we go. So again, I'm going to try not to spend too much time on each one. And of course, in the comments below, you can let me know your thoughts on any of the albums I'm going to show. And of course, you can share what you picked up this month as well. So again, we got a lot to get through. So let's just start from the beginning. So for the first category, these are albums that I'm not really going to go too in depth on. And those albums are the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I picked up two albums. We have Californication and Stadium Arcadium. And then after that, we have Pearl Jam with Vitalogy, hopefully I said that right. Then we have Ringo Starr with Bukus of Blues. And then we have Third Eye Blind with their self-titled debut album, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And then lastly, for this category, we have Carrie Underwood with Carnival Ride. So for this Red Hot Chili Peppers album, Stadium Arcadium, I'm not going to say much because again, album exchange. This is actually Scott's pick this time around. This is a big double album essentially. There's like 28 songs on this. And honestly, it's going to be a long listen, but I think for this album exchange, I'm only supposed to listen to the first disc. And then for the next album exchange, it'll be the second disc. So that's a little something different, I guess. And then for this one, Californication, this was actually a Patreon request, also from Scott. So this month has been me kind of doing a little mini deep dive on this band. This is a band I've always kind of ignored for a long period of time. I've always respected them as musicians. You know, Flea, amazing bass player, I cannot deny that. Same with Chad Smith, who's a great drummer. But really the big thing that always kept me away from them was the lead singer's vocals. Anthony Kiedis, I think is how I say his last name. I don't know, before his vocals were not really my thing, but at some point, maybe one of these days, I'll gain a bigger appreciation for his vocals. I'm not going to say if it's changed or not, but still, it'll be kind of nice to actually give this band a chance. And then pretty much the remaining four here are all Patreon requests. I guess I'm now on this quest to own all my Patreon suggestions I get. So all these are from past people. I don't have them all, but at some point I will. So Pearl Jam, Vitalogy, yeah, I think that sounds a bit better. And it's interesting. It's kind of like in this almost like book sort of thing, like a little mini I don't know, almost like you would see like a small journal or something. I think that's kind of cool. Interesting imagery, and the disc is back here. So that's pretty neat. Ringo Starr, this is his second album. His second solo album. This is his first time taking a stab at country. So this was a Jacob Martin request. And then we have Third Eye Blind, same thing, debut album. And then Carrie Underwood getting more country into the collection. And yeah, so if you want to know my thoughts on all these albums, because I have heard these already, then check out my Patreon page, where you'll have access to all the album suggestions and reactions that I post on there. But there we go. Again, I'm going to try to keep this section small so we can get onto the big stuff. So let's continue on here. So for this next category, these are albums you have seen already because these 5 were from my most recent record store pickup video. And just kind of do a quick roll call on these. We have Blue Oyster Cult with Heaven Forbid, one of their 90s albums. Then we have Lady Gaga with Joanne. Then we have Gong. This is called Espresso 2 from the late 78, I believe. Then we have Smiler by Rod Stewart from 74. And then finally, we have Frank Zappa with Apostrophe, also from 1974. So funny I'm starting with the Blue Oyster Cult one first, because in actuality, this should have been in the first category that we already talked about, because this was another Patreon request. Shout out to my man Mickey, of course. So I said this already, but I had a disc-only copy for a long time, but lo and behold, I found an actual physical complete copy. So I just went for it. But again, like I said, this is another one I'm not going to go too in-depth on, because if you want to know my thoughts, go to Patreon. But still cool to own this one. So the other Blue Oyster Cult album I need to get a complete copy is the next one, I think, Curse of the Hidden Mirror. We'll see where that goes from here. Probably going to be a while. But now these ones I will finally start talking about my more in-depth thoughts on these. So Lady Gaga Joanne came out when? 2016? Something like that? Somewhere around that time, I think. But yeah, this is supposed to be her going in a more personal direction. I heard her debut album, because I have that, and I had some fun time with this one. This one, I didn't like as much, but who knows? This could be one of those albums that could grow. But again, I've only heard it once. Again, she sounds fine. There's some good vocals on here, and there's some catchy songs here and there. But again, you can definitely tell she's trying to be more personal, more intimate, because the songs aren't like they don't hit right away, I don't think. But maybe on repeated listens, maybe you get more of appreciation for it. That's my thought, at least. And then for the Gong album, this is the first one to enter the collection. The history of Gong is kind of confusing, because this is like a different iteration of the band. The early stuff, that's definitely more of the psychedelic, spacey sort of sound. Here, this kind of iteration of the band is going more of a jazz rock approach. So that's kind of interesting. So maybe at some point I'll take a look at those early ones to see how much they compare. But this, in particular, pretty decent. I thought it was pretty strong. Again, it's all instrumental, which, it's jazz rock, so that's to be expected. But there's still some very interesting playing on here. Again, could maybe need more listens from me, but I came out of this on a positive note. So again, I still want to check out more of this band in the future. So we'll see where that goes. And then the Rod Stewart album. This is a kind of a lesser known album from him, because his early 70s stuff was very popular, but by this point it's starting to kind of go away a little bit. But I still had some fun time with this one. Sweet Little Rock and Rollers, okay. Farewell, Sailor, and then there's a song where Elton John does a duet. Oh, now I remember. Let Me Be Your Car. That's the one where Elton John actually guest appears on. So that's kind of a fun little thing, I guess. Again, not one of his stronger albums, but again, there's still some songs that I did enjoy. But I wouldn't say this is like essential. So that's just my thinking, at least. And then the final one of this category is Frank Zappa with Apostrophe. This is often like his big commercial album, because it had a pretty big hit on here with Don't Eat the Yellow Snow, a song about Eskimos, I think. And it's another pretty good album. I didn't like it as much as other ones I've heard. I think One Size Fits All is still better. And of course, Hot Rats is definitely better than this. But again, could use more listens as well. But I didn't hate this. It's still in that period of Frank Zappa that I tend to enjoy a bit more. But again, that's just my first thoughts on that one. So that's the end of that category. Definitely the smallest category in this video. Okay, for this next category, these are CDs that I have picked up from either Amazon, eBay, or Discogs. I will not be specifying exactly for each one, but it's either one of those three. First up, we have a debut album, and this is for the prog band Camel. This one came out in 1973. I like the green, by the way, and that camel is actually pretty interesting. Looks like it's on a train. But Camel, again, they're not like up there with your Yeses and Genesis when it comes to popularity, but Camel often are pretty highly regarded in the prog genre. And I already have a few albums from them. You know, I have the big ones. I have Mirage, I have Snow Goose, and I have Moon Madness. And I even have one from 79 or 78 with Neon, or I Can See Your House From Here, something on that line. But I've always been meaning to get their debut. And I think this is a very well done debut. I think all the elements that made Camel are all present here. I can see some people saying they're still kind of figuring things out, but to me it didn't really change too much. I still had a good time with this album. Great melodies, which is the big thing I love about Camel, is that it's very melodic and just has a beauty to it despite the more experimental nature of progressive rock. But still, very well done. Really glad I have this. Then following that, we have Kin Carnes with Mistaken Identity. If you remember in my record store pickup video, I also picked up the single Betty Davis Eyes, and that 45 did its job because it actually made me want to pick up the album. And that's what I did. And I will say, I didn't love it as much as I thought I would. Maybe I had my expectations too high. But again, there's still some nice songs on here. I mean, again, Betty Davis Eyes, that's a classic song. But there are some other songs I did enjoy, like Miss You Tonight, Hit and Run, the title track, Still Hold On. And again, I do like the more gravelly, raspy nature to her voice. But again, I think I was hoping for a little bit more. But still, very glad I own it now, at the very least. And then we have Kelly Clarkson with Breakaway. So I think in January I picked up a few. Well, it was in my mom's collection originally, but I inherited the two of her albums, and it really inspired me to pick up this album. This is her, I think, her first album or second album. It's her second album. I'm now remembering, and it had probably my favorite song from her with Breakaway. That's a song I've heard many times growing up, and the rest of the album is pretty strong. Still, I think I prefer Stronger a bit more. I think that's a bit stronger. But this is still pretty nice. Probably my second favorite Kelly Clarkson album I've heard thus far. But, you know, again, it's not totally in line what I usually prefer. But when it's good, it's pretty good. And, of course, as Breakaway, which you already know I like that song a lot. Okay, here's where we get something interesting. We have Joni Mitchell, and this is Wild Things Run Fast. This is from 1982. And this is often seen as a interesting album, given that it's 1982. And Joni's is trying to kind of go for a commercial sound, because one of the things I looked up is that she was listening to The Police quite a bit. So she was trying to take inspiration from that. And I've heard people kind of trash this album, saying it's Joni's sellout period. But after giving it a listen, I don't really get that. Because for one thing, I don't think it's not like full-blown pop music. It still has that Joni Mitchell aura, you know, with the lyrics and the tone of her voice. Again, occasionally there's a song that has a little bit of an Andy Summer guitar tone to it, but it's not too different from what she was doing around this time. Overall, it's an okay album. Honestly, I was kind of disappointed that it wasn't poppy enough. Because I was kind of curious how that would sound, but it's still an okay album. Like, it's probably not one of my favorites, honestly. Maybe it's another one where I thought I was gonna like a bit more, but you know, it's good to have. And this is actually a Japanese issue of the album, because there's Japanese on the back, which is, I guess, one of the easier ways to find the album. But you know, again, it's fine. Let's just keep moving. So we have 4 albums from the same band up next, and I'm very happy to have these because this is from one of my favorite prog bands ever, and that band is Renaissance. So I have their debut album from 1969, really cool album artwork, by the way. And then we have the second album called Illusion from 71. And then after that we have 1972 with the album called Prologue. And then skipping ahead, we have the album called Timeline Can you guess what decade this album came out in? Okay, jokes aside. So, Renaissance have a very interesting history because they really were a band that kind of came out of the ashes of the Yardbirds, because two of the members, when the Yardbirds kind of finally broke up officially, two of the members decided to form a new band, and I'm trying to remember their names. I think it was probably Keith Rafe, I believe, and then Jim, I think it was Jim McCarty. I believe those are the two. I could be wrong. Don't quote me. And they just got together some different members, including Keith's younger sister Jane, and they decided to take what they had from the Yardbirds and incorporate more symphonic elements to the sound, and that's kind of where Renaissance came from. So their first two albums are very fascinating because this is a very different lineup from when most people know Renaissance for. There's no Annie Haslam, no John Camp. So it's interesting to give these two albums a listen because you can hear the seeds on where they were gonna go, but it just sonically it just has a different tone, which some of it works, but then there are other times it doesn't work as well. I'd say the debut is pretty good. There's some good moments on here. Tony, I keep saying Tony. Keith does a fine vocal. He's not like the greatest singer in the world, but he does the job. I kind of wish though that Jane had more vocals on this one, even though she's listed in the credits. There's only a few moments she actually comes up, and that's really my favorite thing about Renaissance is the female vocals. And when Jane does come up, she sounds good, but I have that bias towards Annie, so that's gonna be a thing. But still very cool. Illusion, probably a step down from the debut because I found some of the songs kind of meandered a bit. Nothing really that memorable. And some of it just felt aimless, especially on the last song, Past Orbits of Dust. Felt like that could have been a much more epic conclusion. But again, fine moments, but definitely not as strong, I'd say. One of the weaker albums I've heard from this band. And then after these two, I'm not going to go into specifics, but basically all the members left, and out of the ashes of those, you have a completely different lineup for Prologue. That's where we finally get Annie Haslam, John Camp's on bass, and then you have another pretty prominent figure in the band with, what's her name? Betty Thatcher, who's the lyricist. And yeah, this is where Renaissance become more of that band I tend to prefer. Very good start to this lineup. Some great moments like Sounds of the Sea, Spare Some Love, Bound for Infinity. Very strong stuff on this one, and then you have a big stretch of great albums. Songs like albums like Ashes Are Burning or Scheherazade and Other Stories. I butchered that probably. And then probably my favorite is Turn of the Cards. But then skipping ahead to the 80s, this is when a lot of prog bands trying to fit in. Some of it worked, some of them didn't. And Renaissance tried to get with the times. And again, there's one of those cases where prog snobs like to trash 80s material from well-loved prog bands. But I'm always the one that always defends it. So, do I agree with the prog snobs, or am I going to stick it to them? I guess I would have to agree with the prog snobs a little bit. I'm not saying this is a bad album, because I think there are some good songs. I think the first half is pretty solid. Yeah, there is more catchier. They're trying to go for a radio hit, but I think it still sounds fine. And I think Annie still fits. I think she could have worked. But by the second half, it kind of starts to fall apart. That's where the songs are trying to also be experimental. They try to go for an art rock approach, and I don't think it works that well with this 80s production. And probably the worst song on here is Autotech. And we have John Camp singing. And, John has sung on albums prior, but those are usually my least favorite because I don't think John's that good of a singer. Just stick to the bass, please. But you know, so again, I'm kind of sad. I was hoping I was gonna love this more, but I was just kind of left kind of lukewarm, unfortunately. But then again, I haven't heard the only I'm almost complete with all the 70s albums. I think I need one more, and then I need one more from the 80s, so I have a good run through. So hopefully I get those at some point. But again, awesome to have Renaissance, and especially the early material in the collection now. So earlier I showcased Bukus of Blue, Ringo's country album. Well, let's continue with that theme because I have two more Ringo albums. We have Look Up from 2025, so literally a year ago. And then we have 2026, literally days after recording this, Ringo came out with another country album called Long Long Road. So after many years of doing only EPs, Ringo finally came back to release full-length studio albums, going back to good old country, stuff that he has said many times he's felt more comfortable with. And I'll start with this one. I think out of the two, I think this is definitely a little bit better. Again, not like a huge country fan. And you know, there are some songs that are maybe a little too country for me. But when it hits that right spot, it's usually a pleasant listen. And I do agree, I think Ringo's vocals do fit really well with country. Probably my favorite song on here is Time on My Hands. Shout out to Adam for requesting that song on Patreon. And then this one, Long Long Road, again, very similar feel to Look Up, I think. The only thing I would say is that maybe the songs maybe aren't as memorable as Look Up. I don't know, I could be wrong on that. That's just my opinion as of now. But again, there are some songs I liked. Maybe my favorite song is the title track. I think this is a very fitting closing song. That's a bit more of a sentimental song. But yeah, not much else to add. But again, gotta give my boy Ringo some more love, some peace and love, you know. And I know later this year, Paul McCartney's going to come out with a new album, so definitely going to pick that up. And it's cool that the remaining two Beatles are still releasing stuff today. And these next two are also from the same band, and this is a band I've been trying to get into for a long time, trying to find their CDs, but I never seem to come across until I finally bit the bullet and I decided to buy them online. So we have Survivor. We have 1982, Eye of the Tiger. And then, skipping a couple years, we have 1984 with Vital Signs, the first with their singer Jimmy Jamison, something like that. So yes, Survivor, one of the big AOR bands of the late 70s, early 80s. And finally time to check them out. I decided to get these two first, as you know, we have one with Dave Bickler. I think that's his last name. I'm forgetting a lot of last names today. But he's the first original lead singer, and then he left the band due to vocal problems. And then you have Jimmy Jamison on vocals, starting with Vital Signs. And I will say, yep, this is good stuff. Out of the two, I think I might still prefer Eye of the Tiger, not only because it has the title track, which is classic, but think about this period of Survivor. It has a very Journey feel to it. Again, there are times Dave has a very Steve Perry style of singing, which, hey, I don't mind. I love Steve Perry, so this is right up my alley. And there's still some very catchy songs on here. Besides the title track, Feels Like Love is a good, fast-paced, catchy rock song. Hesitation Dance, Children of the Night, American Heartbeat. It's, again, very strong, like early 80s rock. And same thing could be said with Vital Signs. It's hard to determine which I prefer in terms of the lead singer. I think both are great for different reasons. So I'm not really going to give my opinion on that right now, seeing I think I need to listen to Jimmy's era a little bit more, because I do have a bit more idea of this era. But again, you still have some good songs like I Can't Hold Back, and of course you have the big power ballad, The Search Is Over, Broken Promises, Popular Girl. I See You in Everyone. Yeah. Again, when this is one of those cases where they get a new singer and it feels like they didn't really lose anything. Still sounds like great Survivor. So they really were survivors. I'll shut up. But by the way, not done talking about Survivor in this video. Stay tuned for that. And now we're going to be moving along to the next category. And this is the longest, biggest category in this video. I got these CDs from an app called Whatnot. So if you don't know what Whatnot is, what it essentially is, it's basically an app where people kind of live stream. And in these live streams, people are auctioning on various things, and then people watching, they can bid on a certain item. And if they win the auction, they get it shipped to them, essentially. So I'm not sponsored, by the way. That's kind of, I'm just explaining, but I did hear they do offer sponsorships. So anybody at Whatnot listening or watching, hit me up. I gotcha. Anyway, so yeah, it's my first time using the app, and I probably have gone a bit overboard because I picked up, this is where the big chunk of the haul came from, because I did get a lot. So again, I'm going to try and get through this as fast as possible, but we'll see how it goes. So let's get moving. Starting in this category, we have the B-52's Cosmic Thing from 1989. All right, so I feel like it was kind of inevitable I would eventually get this album, as it has Love Shack on it, which is probably one of their biggest hits. And I wouldn't say I'm like a die-hard B-52 fan. I know I like some songs. I have their debut album, and this is probably going to be the last I'm going to pick up unless I'm told otherwise. But again, there was a lot of good songs on here, like Dry Country. Besides Love Shack, probably my second favorite song was Deadbeat Club. I think that was kind of a nice song. My problem with B-52s is that, you know, I think their main lead singer, Fred Schneider, there are times his vocals can be a bit grating, but I get it. It's supposed to be that very eccentric, very unique sort of thing that, you know, some people gravitate towards. I wouldn't say I'm fully in love with it, but you know, I guess it works for what they're doing. So yeah, in B-52s, interesting band, and there are some good poppy songs on this, but I'm not going to say this is like the best thing I've heard in my life. After that, Pat Benatar comes in with her debut album, In the Heat of the Night. Very, very nice to find this for a good price. By the way, a lot of these things I got from Whatnot, I get for like cheap as like $3. And 3 to 5 most of the time. But yeah, this is a very good debut. Again, you have Heartbreaker, the big song on this, but I also really enjoyed I Need a Lover, the title track, My Clone Sleeps Alone, then Don't Let It Show, and then probably one of my favorite songs is We Live for Love. Very good, catchy song. That's when she kind of showcases her high register, which is really nice. But this is a very strong debut. Definitely one of the big highlights of this haul, I'll be honest. And here's a fun one. We have Black Country Communion, and it's the name of the band. This is their first album, and you have a lot of big figures on here. You have famed blues rock guitarist Joe Bonamassa, and then you have Glenn Hughes, who, of course, famous bass player. Of course, he's played with Deep Purple and Black Sabbath, and he has a solo career. And then you have Jason Bonham, the son of John Bonham from Led Zeppelin, on here too. So kind of a super group, if you will. And this is a very, very nice album. Very strong. Again, very bluesy in a lot of the times, but again, the guitar is very heavy sounding, and you know, Glenn vocally sounds really great, and drumming, very, very good stuff on there. So this is a very cool thing to have. I've heard about this for a long time, but glad to actually finally own it now. So excellent discovery here. Then we have Blackfoot, and this album is called Marauder. And Blackfoot are known as like a southern rock band, but after giving this a listen, I didn't really hear too much southern rock, but it was definitely very heavy. Like, it's definitely more on the hard rock vein, I'd say, but I was really blown away with this. I really enjoyed this one. Definitely another one of the big highlights here. Again, it's very heavy, great guitar work. Even the vocals are pretty cool. It was just a pretty good listen all the way through. I enjoyed every song on this. So again, for a first Blackfoot album, I'm impressed. So I might check out more from Blackfoot in the near future. Again, any recommendations, let me know. And we have Boston. Yep, I picked up another Boston album. This is called Walk On. And this one came out in 1994. Alright, so I guess I'm in that vein. I'm trying to get all the Boston albums now, because I know they don't have a ton of albums, because they take so damn long to release one. And again, I came into this one with low expectations, because I know as they can progress, they start to really lose themselves. And that said, I was pleasantly surprised. I kind of didn't think it was that bad. Of course, what's going to turn off some people is that this is the first and I think only album where you have 0 vocals from Brad Delp. This is a different singer they got on board with this. And, you know, the singer's not bad. He actually does an admirable job. Again, nothing can top Brad Delp, but, you know, this guy does a decent job, and you know, the songs were actually pretty solid. Might be a hot take. I might prefer this over Third Stage. So, again, take that for a grain of salt. But for a first listen, it actually wasn't bad. But, you know, I'm really going to come with low expectations when I eventually pick up the rest. So, wish me luck on that. And we have another album I've been meaning to get for quite a while. We have Coverdale Page from 1993. So, referring to David Coverdale, of course, from Whitesnake, and Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin. And I've heard many positive things about this, and yep, pretty good. Again, great guitar work with Jimmy Page, that's to be expected. And then David Coverdale still sounds really good on this. Again, very, very heavy when it needs to be, but also times where it does slow down, where Jimmy gets to do some acoustic stuff. So, yep, very strong. Really dig it a lot. Very glad to finally have it in the collection. I did pick up some metal albums, of course. We have a band called Demons and Wizards. And I'll be honest, I really got this purely because of the name of the band, because I've heard about this band, and they get their name from the Uriah Heep album, which, by the way, I don't know if you can see, but the record that I bought not that long ago is back there. Don't know if you can actually see it, but it's there. It's right in front. But, yep, so this is more of a power metal sort of band, and I liked it. And nothing really stood out right away, as I adjust my camera again. Again, vocals were solid, some guitar work was pretty good, but as a whole, it was just kind of an okay listen. But, you know, I haven't listened to much power metal, so I don't know if that's just the way it is with a lot of power metal. But, hey, still cool to have that one in the collection. And I slowly build my Dream Theater collection with 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence. Yep. Again, Dream Theater. I have a weird, complicated history with this band. There are some days I'm really into them, and then some days I really have no interest. But when I do get a chance to listen to a new album, I'm usually left in a positive note. And again, this one's no exception. It's a 2-disc set. You have disc 1 with lots of standalone songs, and then disc 2 is the big 42-minute epic, which is the title track. A lot of different sections in that one. So, still, great musicianship all around. And yeah, that's pretty much what I enjoy the most of Dream Theater, is the musicianship. Again, not much else to add, but another pretty strong one in their catalog. So, at least to me, as of now. And then we have Duran Duran with their self-titled debut. Probably the song I know the most is the first song, Girls on Film, which in fact was used in an anime. Shout out to that video. So glad to own that on CD now. And for a debut, not bad. I don't love it, but you know, this is them kind of early on. Of course, they would really blow up with Rio, which I do own. But for a first outing, again, could have been worse. I'm not going to say there's like a ton of songs that hit me personally, but again, when you're in the right mood, you'll probably have a good time with this. Bob Dylan with Street Legal's up next. This one's from 78. From an interesting period of Bob Dylan. You know, he had kind of like that resurgence, you know, with Blood on the Tracks, Desire. And then he comes out with this, which is kind of a more commercial sound, which to some people, it was kind of like a step down. But for me, it was actually another one I kind of dug. I get the criticisms of this one. It definitely seems really left field. But, you know, again, Bob sounds okay on here. And there were some moments where the songs were pretty memorable. Not like a top tier Bob Dylan, I don't think. But, again, I had a decent enough time with that one. And here we have two albums from the same bands, from a band I have not checked out in quite a while. We have Epica. We have 2009 with Design Your Universe. And then a couple years later, from 2011 or 2012, somewhere around that time, we have Requiem for the Indifferent. So Epica are known for a symphonic metal sound, and you have two vocalists on here. You have the female singer, and then you have the male singer, which the male singer does a more not quite death metal, but definitely a very growly sort of sound to it. But then you have the female side kind of complementing the two, so you have like a Beauty and the Beast sort of analogy. That's like the best analogy I've heard. That's probably best describes it. And I have one of their albums already. I think it's called the Divine Conspiracy or something like that. So definitely wanted to check out more from the band after ignoring them for a while. Of the two, this one's probably my favorite. This one definitely hit me a lot more. Great production. Again, the vocals on here are really spectacular, and a very cool concept, because Epica is kind of known for their having their albums be like have a theme to them. This one I didn't quite enjoy as much. Felt like it was kind of samey after a while. But, you know, again, still not a bad listen by any means. But again, maybe this is another one that needs more time. But still, glad to own more Epica in the collection. I do dig their sound quite a bit. But we'll see if I can keep on that train. I don't know if they released that many albums. And then we have Gorillaz with their first album. So Gorillaz is a project that gets brought up from time to time. You know, there's a couple hits I know. This one in particular has their big hit Clint Eastwood. And of course they are essentially a fake band, because you know you have the characters on here, but I know it was done. I know this project was spearheaded by one of the members from, I'm always forgetting which band. It's either Blur or Muse. I always get those two confused. But it was one of those two, and one of the guys formed Gorillaz, and I wanted to just try it out, see how I feel about it. And afterward, I came out thinking, yeah, I don't think this one's for me. But I'm still going to give it another go. I do want to check out the next album. That one has Feel Good Inc. on there, which I actually don't mind that song. So maybe that album will be a little bit better than this. But here, as of now, I'm kind of not quite a Gorillaz fan right now. But, you know, adds more color to the collection, of course. Okay, this next one has a little funny story. So first, this is called House of Love by Amy Graham. Now, I will admit, I did not pick this up on my own will. So what had happened was I was on a different seller. I was watching their live stream, and I bought one CD from them, and lo and behold, when it came, I find this. I guess they decided to throw in this for free, which, hey, it's a free CD, so I can't complain that much. But I know a little of Amy Grant, and I know she's known as a Christian musician. And when I saw that, I'm like, okay, I'm not sure how I'm going to feel about this. And after giving it a chance, I tried to give it a fair chance as I could. Yeah, still not my thing. I mean, her voice is fine. You know, it's a pleasant sounding voice, but you know, there's nothing in here, which I'm gonna go back to. It's you know, again, it's pleasant sounding, but there's no no challenge to this one, and it was just kind of boring. Probably the only song I actually liked, well, not like, but I thought was just decent, was her cover of Big Yellow Taxi from Joni Mitchell, which, hey, I mean, that song kind of works with her voice. So, but everything else is kind of just it's very, very mediocre, very bland. But yeah, that's just me. But now let's get back to the heavy stuff. We have the band Great Whites with their 1987 album, Once Bitten. Alright, so Great White were one of the big hair metal bands, if you couldn't tell, just based on the back of here. It's hard to see, but yep. But a good fair amount of people I've probably heard maybe a couple hits from them. And this is my first album I'm hearing from them, and I thought it was pretty solid. Again, nothing wowed me or anything, but for 1987, I thought it was a pretty solid, like 80s heavy metal. Good guitar work, and the vocals are pretty solid too. But not much else to add really, but still, I'm open to more. And then we have Halford, as in Rob Halford, with his album Resurrection. Okay, so this was from the 2000s. And this is during that period where Rob Halford was out of Judas Priest and kind of doing his own thing. He did quite a few projects while he was away, and this was one of them. And I have heard one of the songs already, and that song was Silent Screams. I really like that song because Rob's vocals were great. Love the mood and the different dynamic they play with that song. The rest of the album is also pretty good. Again, for what it is, I think there's some strong material on here. Not the greatest thing Rob Halford's ever done, but, still, there's still some good moments on here, and I definitely would recommend if you're a Halford fan. And here is a very fascinating one. We have Hawkwind, and I don't know if I'm going to say this right, but it's Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La, Ti, Do. Oh, it just clicked. Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La, Ti, Do. Okay. Now I feel like an idiot because I didn't pick it up on the first time. But again, with Whatnots, you'll find some pretty interesting CDs at random, Like, I was not expecting to find a Hawkwind CD in there, and I got it for like $5. I was expecting this to be a little bit higher. But no, $5. Cool. And yeah, so this is from 1972. Yeah, 72. And probably one of the better Hawkwind albums I've heard so far. Again, I like this is that type of space rock that has a drive to it. It's actually at times even heavy at moments, and there's some vocals that kind of fit the vibe, and you're just jamming along to it. And you have Lemmy, good old Lemmy from Motorhead is still here. Well, I'm not sure when he joined, but still pretty cool that he's on this album. But yeah, besides that, it was a fun listen. I actually thought like I said, one of the stronger Hawkwind albums I've heard thus far. So again, hopefully we'll check out more. Then we have Huey Lewis and the News. We have their second album, Picture This. So this is when Huey Lewis were really starting to make their stride. This had a pretty big hit on here with Do You Believe in Love, which is a great pop song. But there's still some really fun songs on here. I also really enjoyed Change of Heart, Tell Me a Little Lie, Is It Me? And also The Only One's also a really good one. But yeah, so right now I think I have all the 3 big albums from Huey Lewis. There's this album, then you have Sports, and then 4. Those are usually like the big 3 for Huey Lewis. So I don't know if we'll go any further with Huey, because I pretty much have all the big songs I love. Well, aside from Power of Love, but that wasn't really on a official studio album. It was just part of the Back to the Future soundtrack. So who knows, maybe I'll pick up a compilation. But in terms of studio albums, it might be the end for Huey for me, but again, I could be wrong. Then we have Kansas with their album Power from 1986. So this is the first Kansas album from the 80s that's in my collection, because I still have pretty much all the 70s stuff, but nothing from the 80s. And pretty decent. Again, nothing incredible, but for the 80s, I think it could have been a lot worse, given how, again, a lot of these prog bands have the reputation of not really fitting the 80s well. This one doesn't really fall into that category, but there is definitely an element that I feel is missing on here. Maybe it's the lack of violin. Maybe that's the big contractor I have with this one. But still, not a bad album. And then this is a blind buy. This is a band called Mazzy Star, and this is called So Tonight That I Might See. So I have no idea who Mazzy Star were when I saw this. I just saw the album cover, and people in the cellar was kind of hyping it up, so I'm like, screw it, let's bid on this. And this is not really a thing I don't think I would gravitate towards so much. They are listed as a dream pop band, and you hear it, and I guess you can hear it. It's a very dreamlike quality. It's very mellow, and I guess it's supposed to put you in like a dreamlike state. But to me, I just found it a little too mellow for my liking. It borderline getting a bit boring, which I'm kind of ashamed because I know a lot of people seem to like them. So if you're a Mazzy Star fan, I'm sorry, but I don't know, this one really did not click with me. Again, maybe I need to be in the right mood for it, but who knows, maybe I'll give it another chance at some point. Then we have some Meatloaf. We have Welcome to the Neighborhood from 1995, the big follow-up to Bat Outta Hell Part 2. Well, I say big follow-up lightly because it wasn't really as big as that. But, you know, it's in the same era of that album, so I got it. And yeah, not bad. And Meatloaf still sounds pretty good on here. There's some good standout moments, some good vocals on here. I Lied For You is pretty good. Then you have Left in the Dark. And then Where the Rubber Meets the Road. Again, still pretty solid. Again, not as good as the last, but I think it's still worth at least one listen. And now more metal is here. We have Metal Church with their debut album from 1984. Now I've been seeking out this album for a while because so many people talk very highly of this album. And I can definitely see the hype around this one. Again, great, kind of more thrashy, has some speed metal aspects to it, has some pretty good vocals on here, and guitar work is just very great. And I just came out had a very pleasant experience with this one. And the only song I'm kind of not as into, I don't know how much of a high take it is, but I'm not that crazy about their cover of Highway Star by Deep Purple. I don't know, it didn't really click with me. I'm granted, it's hard to top the Deep Purple version, but you know, I mean, it's not horrible, but I feel like didn't really capture that magic of the original. But everything else, thumbs up for me. So glad to actually own this in the collection now. Same thing could be said about the next one. We have the Michael Schenker Group with their debut album. So we finally have another Michael Schenker album, because now I have 3. I have this album, the next album, and Assault Attack. So cool. So this is the first kind of solo thing Michael has done after he left UFO and then briefly reunited with Scorpions. It's still very cool album. Great guitar work as always, which is to be expected. You know, the vocals, that's kind of my only like nitpick. The vocalist is not the greatest, but granted, I'm comparing the Graham Bonnet from Assault Attack, and that is Graham Bonnet is just on a league of his own. But you know, Michael Schenker definitely makes it up for it. So very, very happy to own another Schenker album, because Michael Schenker has become one of my favorite guitar players in recent time. And this is another like fuck it moment. So I picked up Eddie Money, Nothing to Lose. I could have just skipped on this, because there wasn't a song I was totally familiar with, except maybe Walk on Water, which is the biggest hit on here. But you know, I just went for it anyway because it was cheap, so why not? And you know, the album's not bad. But aside from some of the singles, again, it's kind of more like by Eddie Money by the numbers. You know, he's kind of riding high after Take Me Home Tonight became such a big hit. But yeah, this one didn't quite live it up to that one. But hey, it is what it is. Yeah, I'm just gonna keep moving because I really have nothing else much more to say about it. And then we have this fun edition. I found Keith Moon, Two Sides of the Moon. This is his only solo album that he released in 1975. And it is, okay, let me back up. Like, I bought it solely to hear what the heck Keith Moon could do by himself. And, I will say, it wasn't as crazy I thought it was going to be, because I thought it was going to be a lot worse. That said, it's still not great, but it could have been a lot worse, like I said. There's covers on here. He even covers The Who, which is interesting. He covers The Kids Are All Right. But there's some Beatles covers on here. You have a Beach Boys cover, which, of course, knowing Keith Moon, he would. I think Ringo guests on one of the tracks. But, it's not the worst thing in the world. But, it's Keith kind of being Keith. Vocally, it's like I don't know how you describe Keith's vocals. It's kind of just there, just for the heck of it. But it's definitely, I don't regret getting this, because hey, just for the fact that it's a Keith Moon solo album. Like, when the heck am I ever gonna come across this again? And again, I got this cheap, so I think it was like $5 too. So I'm not complaining. All right, this is a kind of a one-hit wonder to a lot of people, and probably still is. So we have Mark Morrison with Return of the Mac. Of course, famous for that killer title song, which that's one of the reasons why I got it. And the rest of the album's actually okay. Nothing can top Return of the Mac. Like, nothing. But his vocals are solid for the most part, and there were some memorable songs. So yeah, I'm not upset. I'm not upset, really. So I was expecting it to kind of only like Return of the Mac and nothing else, but there were some songs that caught my attention. So I'm not sure how often I'll listen to the whole album, but the Return of the Mac, can't go wrong with that one. So, pun intended, but maybe I'll return to the Mac at some point. And we've gone from one-hit wonder to this one-hit wonder. We have New Radicals with their album, Maybe You've Been Brainwashed Too. And this had the big hit, You Get What You Give, which is a great song, great kind of late 90s rock pop sort of song. And kind of similar with the Mark Morrison, though I think I prefer this a bit more. Definitely some very nice songs on here. Nothing too overly memorable besides the big hit, but it's solid. You're not going to come out of this angry or upset or anything. You'll just come out of this kind of like, yeah, that was decent. I didn't mind that. But, again, it's just the big hit just overshadows everything. And now we have Sinead O'Connor. I never really figured out how to pronounce her first name. I feel I kind of should be ashamed of myself. But we have I Do Not Want What I Haven't Got. So this had her big hit with Nothing Compares to You, the Prince song. And, people usually talk very highly of her, and I feel like I really should have this album. Now, that said, I'm not going to say I enjoyed it. I don't know. It's not quite my style. Maybe, again, it's a bit too mellow for me. But, Nothing Compares to You is a pretty nice song. Like, I actually don't mind that one. But I don't think any other song matches that. Again, that's just a me thing. I'm probably in the minority, because I know, again, she's very highly respected by a lot of people, and there's some that really don't like her. But I'm not going to say I hate her. But musically, I don't know. I think I was expecting a bit too much. But we bring it back once again with Queensryche, with the self-titled album from 2013, I think. Yeah, 2013. Just want to make sure I got it right. So, this is the first album with the new revamped lineup. You have Todd LaTorre on lead vocals this time, replacing Jeff Tate. So, I've been meaning to check out this era, because there are some, of course, there's people that are like Jeff Tate or nothing, I try not to have that mentality. But so, very unfortunate to own the first one with Todd on vocals, and just coming from a Jeff Tate fan, this was a really good listen. Like, I really enjoyed this one. I think back in January, I picked up Here in the Now Frontier, and I really was not into that album, and that one had Jeff Tate on it. This shows that Queensryche can go on without Jeff Tate. Again, Todd vocally sounds really great, definitely fits the mold. And musically, it just sounds like the Queensryche of the 80s, just in the new millennium, if you will. And it is so good. Again, very memorable songs. The guitar work is great. I already mentioned Todd's vocals already, but man, I definitely want to check out more of this era of the band. If the rest is as strong as this, then yeah. I mean, I'm still gonna probably pick up those other Jeff Tate albums I don't own, which, you know, to a lot of people, some of them are very hit or miss. But yeah, I'm glad that Queensryche are still around. And then we have Rats with Reach for the Sky from 1988. Yep, picked up another Rats. It's been a while, and pretty good. Not as good as the debut. That's really all I can say about this album. It's good, but it's kind of rat by the numbers, which, you know, pretty sure after this album is going to continue to go downhill. So still need to get the second album. And here's Scorpions with Crazy World, known for the big hits Wind of Change, which is a nice little power ballad. And, you know, the rest of the album's also pretty solid. Again, nothing else that really like, oh my god, this is like an underrated gem, you know? But it's listenable. You won't have a bad time, but it's nothing on quite the level of what we've heard before from this band. But still, cheap. So I got it. And then we have Sixpence for the Richer for the debut album. So this is kind of an interesting case because it has this picture, but this is the actual album cover. I don't know, it's weird. I don't really get the thought process of this. But Sixpence for the Richer, I don't know if you would call them a one-hit wonder. I don't know what other hits they have. But I know this album has the hit Kiss Me, which I have heard before, and that's actually a pretty good song. And the rest of the album's actually pretty solid too. But you know, they do have a Christian undertone to them, which there are times it does kind of get a bit, you know, not preachy, but it definitely gets a bit too on the nose. But they have a nice vibe to them. Like, I do like the vibe they have. And I do like the vocalist too. I think she definitely carried the album for me. Again, I'm not going to say this is like a masterpiece. I don't know how often I'll go back to the album as a whole. But when I do, I think I'll still have a nice time overall. Here's another kind of more late period metal band. We have Steelheart. And this album apparently had different covers. This is actually an alternative cover, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And kind of a similar vibe with Great White I showed earlier. Yeah, and they're pretty solid. Again, there's a good guitar work on here. Vocals are decent. But it's just kind of, by this point, we're getting closer to the 90s. Actually, I think this actually came out in the 90s, like 1990. And, you know, this style of music was starting to go out of phase, and you can kind of hear all the old tropes. But no, it's still fine. I think it's still worth a listen if you're into this style of music. And Rod Stewart is here yet again. We have Out of Order from 1988, another 1988 album. So I came, again, cheap, as I said, for some of these already. And it does have a song I do enjoy, and that is Forever Young. That's a great kind of like late 80s Rod Stewart pop song. Really enjoyed that one. And there's some other songs that were decent all the way through and through. But there's also some very generic stuff, which that kind of took me out. So it's kind of a mixed bag of an album. Some stuff's okay. Others is kind of just like in ear, out the other. But, you know, as Forever Young, so I guess I can be happy with that. And here is an EP. We have Striper, the Yellow and Black Attack. So very cool to find this. So Striper, I don't talk about them enough, but they are a Christian metal band, and I've shown quite a bit of Christian music already, but this is by far the best one because it's heavy. You still have the guitar work. You know, Michael Sweet's vocals are just up my alley, that very high-pitched sort of style he does. You know, again, you have the Christian lyrics, but to me, they don't really get in the way because the music rocks so hard. And yeah, very, very cool to find this one. I don't know how rare this is, but still awesome. And this was before they would release their first full-length album with Soldiers Under Command. But to hear them early on, very cool find. Very happy to own this one. And earlier we talked about Survivor, but here they are once again, because again, just out of the blue on Whatnot, I found a seller that was selling 2 more albums from them. So I found Survivor's debut album from 1979, and then in 1983 they also released Caught in the Game. So this is when you still have Dave Bickley on vocals. And this album here is actually the final album he would sing on before being replaced with Jimmy Jamison. And I think both albums are really, again, I think I'm discovering I'm becoming a bit of a Survivor fan. Very cool to find the debut. Has a very late 70s, like I don't think I hear as much Steve Perry on this album. Although it's still kind of there, but I don't think it's as prominent. But still some very good songs like Somewhere in America, Let It Be Now, Whole Town's Talking, Love's Got Me, Whatever It Takes. So very cool find, and this is also pretty good. Another very strong. I think it's a pretty good album for Dave to go out with. You know, you have the title track, Jackie Don't Go, Never Stop Loving You, Half-Life, Slander. Very strong album. So there we go. So 4 albums from Survivor in this haul. I'm very happy. Definitely want to check out more. Then we have System of a Down with their debut album from 1998. So it's been a minute since I've checked out another album from this band. Of course, I have Toxicity, which is their big album with Chop Suey and I think it was Ariel, the other big song on here. And that's a really strong album. And I found myself digging their debut as well. Like, I still prefer Toxicity more, but this is a pretty strong way to start a career with. And you still have the heavy guitars, the very dramatic vocals, and it's just very heavy. Very, very interesting stuff. Lyrically gets a bit interesting. And there are some very kind of quirky moments there as well. But it's just a very interesting blend. I think to me it works very well. So I don't know if I'll pick up more from System of a Down, but again, let me know any other good albums from them. Okay, I think this is the last of these late period 80s metal bands that are entering the 90s. And the band's called Tesla, and this album has the honor of having one of the most unfortunate names to an album I've ever seen. It's called Bust a Nut. Yeah. I'm not gonna say anything else besides that. I think it speaks volume. But anyway, so Tesla, again, like the Great White and the Steel Heart, it's pretty good. Again, there's some pretty good stuff on here, but then again, it's 1994, and the album is a bit long. And there are definitely some times it definitely gets a bit samey after a while. But so I don't know which one I prefer more. I think I just slightly prefer this over the Steelheart one. But I don't think there's too much difference. But hey, if you like this stuff, you'll dig it. After that, we get to Venom with their album, their debut album for that matter, Welcome to Hell. Came out in 1981, and I was pretty surprised to find this, of course, and I, again, got this for $5. Hey, good deal. And I've not had another Venom album for a while, because I have Black Metal, like their second album, and that has the honor of being the 100th CD to enter the collection. The 1000th CD to enter the collection. But cool to finally find the debut, and yep, it's Venom. It's pretty much on the same level as Black Metal. Of course, I think I still prefer Black Metal just a little bit more. But this is a very good debut. Again, very heavy. Of course, even though they pioneered the Black Metal genre, they're not like truly that much. Like, it has the elements that Black Metal would eventually become, but you don't really have the very shrieky, very harsh vocals yet. But, you know, it's very heavy. It's definitely extreme. And of course, the imagery, the very shocking satanic imagery, which, you know, is definitely going to get a lot of people's attention for good and bad. But still, it doesn't really bother me. Still a very cool, heavy album. So very happy about this find. And after that, we have Yes with their album Magnification. And I looked it up, and if I remember correctly, this album came out the day before 9/11. I hope you enjoyed that piece of dark trivia. But back to the album. So this is an interesting album because there's no keyboard player on this album. You know, Yes is known for having keyboards on their records. You know, you have Rick Wakeman, Patrick Moraz, Jeff Downes currently. But here, you still have John Anderson, by the way, but you don't have any keyboards. So what they did to substitute, they decided not to get a keyboard player. They went for a symphony orchestra. And I don't know what the consensus are with this album, but I actually thought this symphony actually worked out pretty well. You know, Yes are a very symphonic band, I would say. Even early on, they always had that symphonic charm. So to actually have a symphony in the band kind of works. Not going to replace a keyboard, but I actually thought it was not bad. And yeah, I thought it was a pretty solid album. For a latter period Yes album, especially one of the last ones with John in the band, pretty decent. Again, it's not going to hold a candle to the classic stuff, but I think there's still some good material on here. I think it's worth a listen. So there you go. And the final CD I picked up for the month of April is, in fact, the Armageddon soundtrack. Solely because I wanted to get the Aerosmith song on the CD. You know, I don't want to miss a thing, which I've always loved that song ever since I was a young kid. And because of the soundtrack, I really don't have this talk about all that much. But you have Aerosmith, you have Journey, which you have, you know, this is when you have Steve Aoki on the vocals still. ZZ Top, Bob Seger, John Bon Jovi, Patti Smith, not Patti Smith, but the other Patti Smith or Smythe. I don't know what's the difference. And then a little bit of the score. So yeah, I don't have much else to say, but it's just the soundtrack to Armageddon. So I've not seen the movie, I'll be honest with you. Again, I just got it just because it has the Aerosmith song. But with that said, that should be all the CDs I've picked up for this month. And before we go, let me showcase the ranking. This is something I just started last month. So right now you are seeing all the albums in a ranked order in which I enjoyed them. So I didn't include the Armageddon soundtrack in there because personally soundtracks don't really qualify for the top 50 at the end of the year. So I didn't really include it here as well. But that's what it is so far. So again, we'll see how all these rankings come together. And we'll see which ones will make the top 50 when we get there back in December. But there you go. That is a lot as usual. And my throat is starting to feel it. So again, I'm going to try and end this right away. But hopefully you have enjoyed this CD haul. As always, if you do enjoy these monthly CD haul videos, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel if you are new, follow me on the social medias, support me on Patreon, buy me a coffee, and then of course comment below your thoughts on any of the albums shown, and you can also share what you picked up for this month. So that's gonna do it for me. Thank you again, and I'll see you next time. Take care, and goodbye for now.